My wife just needs to keep quiet and follow my lead. I'm the one who decides whether we divorce or not. So, it's divorce. I don't need someone who can't follow me."
Does he really think I'll obey him with those words? Joy surges within me at my husband's words. Finally my chance has come. I spring into action and my husband is flustered. Right now, I deeply resent my weakness to pressure. My name is Emily. A few years ago, I reunited with my husband Bill at a high school reunion. I thought a brief conversation would end our connection there, but I enjoyed our talk, basking in the afterglow of this little miracle, unaware of my mistake. The mistake became clear when Bill, overly assertive, quickly won me over, leading to a whirlwind romance and marriage. Bill, for some reason, was persistent in his pursuit.
"Looking beautiful today,"
he would say, which was still manageable for me.
"Good morning, Emily. You look beautiful today."
"Good morning." I stammered a reply, causing Bill to smile even more. I blushed and looked down.
"What's wrong, Emily? Are you sick?"
I knew he was teasing, but I couldn't help being charmed. After all, it's not common to be so close, foreheads touching with such a bright smile. Our conversations continued.
"Nice weather today, but your smile outshines it."
He showered me with such sweet words. I was dizzy with phrases I'd never heard before. And so I found myself married to Bill, pushed into it by his persistence. Of course, I didn't marry without thinking. His determination was fierce, but it was my life, and I couldn't just nod along without consideration. So I looked into his income and character thoroughly. First, his income. Working at a congressman's office, father-in-law seemed reliable enough. A stable income seemed assured. I was working too, so we wouldn't struggle financially. Next, his character. Here I made a mistake. I blindly believed Bill was kind and gentlemanly. He treated me delicately during his pursuit, like handling glass. In high school, Bill was the cool center of attention.
"Look at this."
"Say please. Let's see." Hearing such conversations, the teacher and Bill were talking about something, and it gradually became a large group. I sighed in envy.
"Must be nice."
I gasped, covering my mouth, then realized I was jealous of him. Surrounded by classmates, seniors, even teachers, Bill shone. I, friendless and struggling to fit in, envied his radiance. I never considered he might just be a troublemaker, so I believed Bill would treat me with kindness and respect, because he was my admiration. In hindsight, I can see that it was just the troublemakers that Bill was getting around, but at that time, I didn't even think of that, so I assumed that Bill would be a kind and gentlemanly man who would treat me well, because Bill was my idol. To me, a loner in the classroom, Bill was like the sun. Days before the reunion, my long-term boyfriend had broken up with me. Heartbroken, I moved forward without truly understanding Bill's character. Maybe my vulnerability made me want to escape my reality, convincing myself it was right. Regardless, I agreed. Whether by my own will or persuasion, I'm not sure, but I nodded. After that, Bill acted quickly. He worked at father-in-law's office while I worked as a nurse. We got through various procedures and built a new home within a year. Then we moved in, and soon after our child was born. That's when things felt off. The hidden flaws began to show. The snore that had managed to hide until then began to reveal itself. Bill never really helped with the baby.
"If the baby cries at night, what time do you think it is? I have work in the morning. Make it quiet."
"What can I do?"
"Shut up and put it to sleep."
Hearing the yelling, I took my crying child outside the house. It's okay. I soothed her, patting her back. As her cries quieted down, my eyelids grew heavy, but I resisted sleep and went back inside the dark house. After tucking my peacefully sleeping child into bed, I fell asleep before I could return to my own. The next morning, I shook off my grogginess and started preparing breakfast. Bill didn't even notice my sleepy state from being up all night with the baby. Something was accumulating inside me. I returned to work immediately after my parental leave, despite others advising against it. Bill, however, had a different view.
You think you can let me do all the work and act like a king?
His words pierced my heart. It felt like a barb that couldn't be removed, and the blood kept flowing. Yet, I stood strong. I'm still okay. I can still do this. Repeating these lines like a mantra, I juggled work, housekeeping, and childcare. During the day, I left my child at preschool and worked, and when I had night shifts, we stayed at my parents'. Thankfully, they were happy to help since they loved their grandchild, but I always felt guilty. After all, parenting is something that's supposed to be done by both parents. It's meant to bestow heaps of love from parents to their child. Though it's okay to ask for help occasionally, it shouldn't be this frequent. At least, that's not typical in most families. That's why I always apologize to both my parents and my kids. Sorry for the trouble, sorry for neglecting you. On the other hand, Bill seems to be honest with his desires, giving in to his urges with impulsive shopping, sudden dining out, and trips. Specifically, if Bill sees something he likes, he'll buy it without thinking, even if it costs nearly $1,000. It would be one thing if these purchases were useful, but often, they're things with no clear purpose. Before I knew it, one room in our house was filled with his clutter. He would suddenly go out to eat alone or travel with friends. Such actions naturally strain our finances. Yet, Bill doesn't show any concern even as our budget becomes increasingly tight. Also, Bill has a high opinion of himself.
I can do that way better than Emily. Several times over.
Often saying things like, he makes demands that are impossible to meet, expecting professional level skills, setting me up for failure. I try to meet his demands but can't. When that happens, Bill looks at me with pity, as if I'm some disappointing creature, and he keeps telling me to respect him. Something inside me started urging me to think about divorce. Both the devil's and the angel's whispers told me to run away, but I couldn't take that step. I was scared. How would people view a child without one parent? That's what I was worried about. No, it's probably not for the child's sake. I don't divorce because I'm protecting myself. I want to believe that he still loves me. It's my own expectation. Thinking this way makes me despise myself even more. I lived in self-loathing. 3 years into our marriage, Bill announced a decision disguised as a suggestion. It was on a rare day off while the kids were asleep, and I was enjoying a warm, relaxing coffee. I hoped for the peaceful moment to last a little longer. I had such a modest wish.
Hey, Emily, I'm changing jobs.
He said it as casually as if he was going to the convenience store. I couldn't hide my shock. I nearly spit out my coffee, which suddenly seemed scalding hot. Drinking down the hot coffee, I tried to dissuade him. Wait! Do we need to do this now? Raising kids is still tough. No matter how much I tried to talk him out of it, Bill wouldn't listen. He became more adamant about it.
Shut up! A wife should just silently obey her husband.
That's how he ended the conversation. Ignoring my objections, he quit his office job. The new life that began was extremely unstable. Thanks to being the son of a well-known politician, Bill could get jobs, but either because he was incompetent or too proud to get along with others, they didn't last. With unstable income, it was up to my earnings to manage everything. He kept wasting money and our finances were in a terrible state. I was covering everything from living expenses to the house mortgage with my salary. Yet, I managed somehow, all for the sake of our children. I had to stand firm to ensure they didn't end up homeless. Also, his frequent job changes meant periods of unemployment. If you're home, can't you at least help with housework?
Housework is Emily's job. Why should I do it? I earn money for you all. If you can't handle it, leave this house.
Bill said that indignantly, Of course, he doesn't lift a finger in parenting. I can't help but wonder, why did I ever marry such a person? As I feel disgusted with myself, anger towards Bill wells up inside me. That's when I had an idea. Something that I thought impossible until a few years ago now seemed achievable, thanks to my anger. Yes, let's get a divorce. As I started to entertain this thought, a glimmer of light appeared on my dark path. Why hadn't I realized this sooner? Why didn't I act on this years ago? Maybe my vision was too clouded by the pain. Now I could look at myself objectively, having gained some perspective, but that perspective was about to vanish due to my ignorance. I decided to divorce and immediately prepared the divorce papers. I felt as light as if I were flying. Finally, I was going to be free. There was something exhilarating about it. In that mood, I handed Bill the divorce papers.
"The decision to divorce is mine to make,"
he said coldly and tore up the papers. The torn remnants of the divorce application looked as fleeting as falling petals, and I suddenly understood. He had no intention of letting me go, and to him I was just a tool. Of course, I was angry, but more than that, I was shocked, barely able to stand. I should have seen that coming, but maybe I hadn't wanted to. Deep down, I must have still had hope. Bill, seeing my silence, smiled and said,
"Emily loves me, right? You'll stay with me for my sake."
I nodded, hollowed out by shock, yet a trace of reason still lingered in my eyes. But Bill seemed to think I had given up. He stretched and left the room. Once Bill was gone, I let out a sigh of relief. I knew what I had to do. Certainly not to suffer in silence. If I did, my dear children would end up trapped like me. I couldn't let that happen. Once I thought this, the path I needed to take became clearer. I felt I could do anything for my beloved family. But Bill was no longer family to me. He might be the father of my children, but to me, he was a stranger. Even if there was no love between us, my children were innocent, so I had to fight for them. From that day, I started gathering information on how to divorce, asking acquaintances, preparing for the inevitable day. For the coming days, I believed in a day when my children and I could finally be free from Bill. 5 years later, the opportunity arrived.
"Hey, I'm starting a business."
It felt like deja vu. As I listened, puzzled, I asked, "What did you say?"
"I said I'm starting a business."
Then Bill excitedly told me he had already borrowed $100,000, putting our house as collateral. I was stunned. It was utterly reckless.
"Emily will help, right?"
Deciding on his own, borrowing on his own, and now asking for help? A boiling rage surged within me. I shouldn't scream in anger. That's what he'd want. I took a deep breath to calm myself. "I won't help you," I firmly declared, hoping he would give up. But of course, it was futile.
"If you won't obey me, then it's divorce. I don't need someone who won't follow me."
As if I would obey. I was beyond astonishment. So astonished, I was speechless. Seeing my loss for words, Bill brought the divorce papers. I don't know when he started using them as a threat, but it worked out for me, because now I could legally leave. I quickly signed the papers, called my children, and started packing. My children, being smart, moved without asking why. As we were about to leave, Bill finally realized what was happening and called out in panic.
"Hey, Emily, you're joking, right?"
Without looking back, I replied flatly, "You were the one who mentioned divorce, Bill. I have no intention of quitting my job. If you want to start your own business, it's better for us to part ways." I pressed on to the speechless Bill. "The furniture and the house can be yours. I don't need child support, but I'm taking the child with me." I left a flustered Bill behind and stepped outside the house. Bill, still not fully grasping the situation, didn't follow us. The beautiful blue sky seemed to be pushing us forward. Hand in hand, my child and I took a step forward with a sense of relief. The step I couldn't take back then melted the snow in my heart. Now, Let me tell you what happened next. After the divorce was finalized, I moved back to my parents' home. They welcomed me back warmly, even though I had returned so suddenly. When I vented about my past struggles, they were even angrier than me. Knowing I had their support made me almost break down in tears. They look after my child while I'm at work. I think my parents are wonderful. Speaking of good parents, Bill's father, my former father-in-law, was furious when he heard about everything. Bill, having failed in his business and lost his job and house, turned to his father for help. After investigating Bill's past actions, his father disowned him. I received a call from Bill's father apologizing for his son's behavior and offering a substantial amount of compensation and child support. He reprimanded his son for his faults and fulfilled his responsibilities without neglecting them. It's amazing how such a great person could have a son like Bill. On the other hand, Bill is struggling a lot, relying on the few acquaintances he has, barely keeping jobs and living in hardship. I heard through the grapevine that he wants to get back together with me, but I firmly refuse. I have no love left for him to accompany him to hell. After all, I've switched to a day job now, and I'm living a meaningful life with my beloved child. I've made friends with other parents who have children the same age, and we go out for lunch and picnics, and I work hard alongside my colleagues. I'm living a very fulfilling life. And you know, if I stayed with Bill, my kind child would have to go through that too. I can't let that happen. I couldn't possibly subject my child to such a terrible fate. After all, a mother is there to nurture and cherish her child.